Hi, Aberenex. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Anne. Hi, Sharon. Hi.
How are you?
Wow. Hey, Mark. I've never met you in person. So fun. Hi, David.
Yeah.
Hi, Ellen.
I can't see. Who said hi?
This is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Hi.
Hello, Ellen.
Hi, Brent. Hi, John. Hi, John. My
Hey,
name.
Alan. Hey.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Pam. Hi, Susan. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Ellen.
Oh, so fun. Does everybody have a glass of wine or, whatever they need?
Got mine.
Good.
Smart show.
Hey, Elaine.
Have a chocolate shake.
Chocolate shake.
That's good.
Definitely good. I don't know, after the last couple of days, drinking or other things are like very normal.
Yeah.
Just waiting for a few people to come. My host, Doug Hill, is going to keep me on track. Hi, Elizabeth. Wow. I can't see you, Marta, but thank you for coming. Can everybody hear the music? Can you bop along with me? Yeah, just a little nervous. You guys are so quiet. Talk amongst yourselves. Chat. Hi, Shelly.
Hi, Ellen.
So fun.
I was sitting in the dark. You couldn't see me, and now I'm going back to the dark.
Okay. So we're missing socialization. So is everybody getting a little teeny weeny tidbit? We really are dying to get out into public, but this is the best we can do right now.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't unmute. I'm sorry, but I see you. Hi, Terrence. Hi, Terry. Hi, Wayne. Okay, this is a really good happy song, which we really, really need.
Hey, Gail. Good to see you.
We're looking for my mom. Just giving people a few more minutes, I think, right, Doug?
Yeah, just a couple of minutes.
Okay, we need a little levity because it's really been pretty intense. When this is all over and we're all able to socialize again, we're going to have some parties.
Okay. I think we're going to start things off now. And we're going to be muting everybody in the audience. I had to unmute myself. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Douglas Hill. I'm co-director of Pasadena Photography Arts. Thank you for joining us. The forum is sponsored by Pasadena Photography Arts, a project of the nonprofit Emerge program at Fulcrum Arts. Our mission, and let me bring up our slides so that you'll get a better idea of what we're doing. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Our mission is to bring a greater awareness of photography to the east side of LA and help emerging photographers achieve visual and career success at all levels, which you can see from the slide. Pasadena Photography Arts presents a monthly program here on Zoom. The forum normally alternates with open show each month. These programs are free to attend, but they cost money to put on. To keep them free, we ask that you donate whatever you can by visiting our website, pasadenaphotographyarts.org, and by clicking on one of the donate buttons that'll take you to our donation page. They're hard to miss. For those of you who have not experienced Open Show, it's an international platform now in 13 countries designed to give photographers at all levels an opportunity to show and discuss their creative projects. If you would like to submit your project to Open Show, go to openshow.org. Select Submit a Project, then scroll down to our venue. We are OS-Pasadena East LA. Since we began, we've helped over 120 photographers get their work in front of an audience, many of them for the first time. Well, we'll welcome your donations. We also want your feedback. So if you have comments or suggestions, shoot us an email. You can also follow us and like us on Facebook. And I got a little out of sequence there. On Facebook and Instagram. I'd like to point out that although the audience will be muted for the duration of the event, everyone will have the opportunity to type questions and comments into the chat whenever you like. The event is also being recorded and will be made available on Pasadena Photography Arts YouTube channel as soon as it's ready in a few days. Tonight, it's our great pleasure to present Ellen Friedlander, Habits, Creativity, and the Now, Breaking Through Personal Doubt to Find My Voice. Ellen Friedlander is a fine art and documentary artist who uses a variety of in-camera and post-processing techniques to reveal and help to understand the unpredictable, idiosyncratic, inscrutable nature of the human condition. Get out of this. I'm going to go back to stop sharing. Since the age of 16, Ellen has been inspired by 20th century street photographers to take to the city streets across the United States, as well as in Hong Kong, where she raised her family. She holds a BFA in art with a minor in photography from Ithaca College and an MA in mass communications with an emphasis on advertising from the University of Florida, Gainesville. After many years of working in all facets of the business of photography, assisting, styling, representing, and working on her own photographic assignments, she has found her own way of expressing the street with her body of work called Extended Frame. After moving to LA in 2018, she joined the Los Angeles Center of Photography and Pasadena Photography Arts. In 2019, PPA added Ellen to our board of advisors to help further broaden our reach as a place for photographic artists living on the east side of Los Angeles to find community and share their work in open show and forum. Welcome, Ellen. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming to this party. I'm very grateful for you guys tuning in and sharing in this amazing forum that we have with Pasadena Photography Arts. I am truly grateful for the organization for it. I showed in 2019 for the first time at Open Show. And so full circle, it's pretty extraordinary to be presenting here on forum like 2 years later. So with not much further ado, I'm going to go right into my presentation. I really want to stress that if this is I'd like to have it more free flowing. So if you have anything you want to add at any time, please feel free.
Will do.
Thank you. So I need to see me too. Okay. All right. Hit that middle one. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I found I came out of the womb basically loving art and being very focused. And this is a photograph from me like in nursery school, and I was taking class at the Munson William Proctor Institute. And it was something I didn't know how hard it was to actually do, and how important it was to have something to say. But I knew that from a very early age that art, whatever that meant, was something that I wanted to be invested in, and I have put every single ounce of myself into it. So I grew up in upstate New York. This is Old Forge. It's the Adirondacks. My grandfather bought the house there in 1945. I grew up there. My kids have grown up there. I hope their children will grow up there. But this is the nature, this tiny little pond at the base of the Adirondack Mountains that go all the way to Lake Placid. This is where I started out. And I found my passion for photography when I was 16 years old at boarding school. And so I directed my next course of going to college, finding a school that would be able to nurture that in me. And I ended up at Ithaca College, that was known for photojournalism, and found myself under two amazing photography professors, Monty Gerlach, who focused on commercial, and Danny Guthrie, who was fine art. And so with their tutelage, I started to really develop and be excited about the medium. And I had the 4x5 camera at my disposal that I could bring home. These are my grandparents, because I pestered everybody I could. And I didn't realize at the time that photography, John Upton's book, along with his wife, had just come out. I mean, to me, I had just no idea that this was all new, because I had never thought about photography as a medium before, and now I'm like immersed in it. And I just think it's always been that way, all right? I knew that Stephen Shore and Joel Meyerowitz were now making color photographs, and they were coming into becoming fine art, and that was being a big discussion. I remember all that in school. But, you know, for me, I was experimenting and I was finding my way. This is one of my pieces from college. So in my senior year at Ithaca College, I was in my senior thesis class. It's a small classroom, probably 10 people in it. And Emmett Gowan is right in front of me and 3 feet away. And he's talking about his work. And he talked, you know, he photographs the vernacular, which is the everyday. And I was absolutely riveted. I mean, I remember it was like an aha moment for me, where I was like, okay, if he can shoot his everyday, well, maybe I can do that. So I didn't know how I was going to make money out of it. I didn't know how I was going to have a job, but I knew that I was going to be making photographs for a long, long time. It was now part of my soul. So this is a photograph. Danny Guthrie is the person I'm holding up, and Jeff Katz is a wonderful photographer here in LA. And these are my people, and amongst others. And so I forgot my train of thought. So what I learned—
We're talking about influences.
Oh yeah. So Emmett Gowan, so with Emmett Gowan and learning about coming along and making photography my passion, I didn't really know how to do it, but both teachers told me that everything I do after I leave college had to build on giving me more and more technical abilities and skills. So I left my upstate New York town and college, and I moved to Washington, D.C., where I didn't know anybody. And the first thing I did was get involved with art, this was a project, just to give you an idea of my 22-year-old self. I got wind of a project in downtown downtown DC. New York City artists and Washingtonian artists came together and for a week took over this old abandoned hotel called the Ritz. And I documented the entire project. So all of a sudden I documented the whole project. I got involved with these two artists. And when it all finished, I had this project and I showed it to the Friends of the Corcoran. But my 22-year-old self didn't know what to do with that. So, okay, so now I've showed my work, I've got a little artsy, but now I need a job. I have no money. So I'm waitering, and I start to call on a photographer. His name is Peter Garfield. He was known as the Washingtonian cover photographer. And I just pestered the crap out of him. I called him, I called him every single week. And one day he said, okay, come in. I was like, okay. So I came in and he was my first intro into the world of photography. And I was like, so thrilled. So I'm an assistant. I'm 5, barely 4. And I remember this shoot like it was yesterday. He's shooting at the base of the Capitol. We're shooting senators. I'm lugging up the equipment. The equipment and the lights are bigger than me. And I'm like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. So we talk about it. And he says, he gives me an opportunity in his office, and I'm in the office. I get to print. I couldn't be more excited. I'm printing in a professional photographer's darkroom. How cool! I have access to a studio, so I'm starting to build, and I get this. So I have some opportunities that come along, and I also meet somebody, and I had always wanted to have a family, and I had always wanted to have children. And so I made a choice. I said to myself, I can do photography and I can work on my skills as I develop my family. And someday, when the right time comes along, I will step into those shoes. So that's what I'm right here today to bring you to, because I truly did, along the last 40 years, work on all the skill sets that I thought that I needed. And the habits that I started to develop as I got a little bit more secure with my camera, because the camera is a very important, it's your box, it's your tool. And so I started to make photographs that I was emulating other people's work, and that are supposedly, they're good, they're pleasant. I sold this, I was very excited. I made this photograph in Hong Kong of my son's tennis, whatever. And I was really, really thrilled that I could make a portrait. This is my mom. I did this a couple weeks ago. And these kind of gave me kind of a confidence, but I wanted to really develop my point of view, which I did not understand. And I think that if you could take one thing away today is the point of view, which I really spent about 6 months trying to figure out. And I actually reached out for help back in 2017. I reached out for to a photographer. His name is Jim Friedman, and he had worked under Minor White at MIT, and he had worked with Imogene Cunningham. And I saw his information on Facebook, and he said, I'm giving workshops, and if you send me your work, I'll see if you fit in. So I sent 20 photographs to him, got brave enough. And the next morning I woke up and he was like, with an email, and we discussed it. And through Jim, who I really asked him for his hardcore opinion about my work on a daily basis, and he was relentless, and he did not sugarcoat anything. I started to develop a way of making photographs that weren't necessarily pretty all the time. I would use different technical abilities, and using multiple in-camera exposure, using triple in-camera exposure, moving the camera, waking up in the morning before I got out of bed and photographing for about 20 minutes, going to bed at night, photographing again, and just doing it. So I'm doing the work, and he shares with me after about 6 months that perhaps it's time for me to move on and explore my love of documentary. And I applied to this workshop in Krakow, which was very unusual. It was 2 Magnum photographers who created this workshop X, and they brought in Magnum photographers to inspire and help you, and then a master printer at the end. Okay, so these are all things that like were over my head, and I was scared. I had no idea if I could even perform at that level, but I get accepted and I go. This photograph, so my project for the whole week while I was there under the Chin-Chi Chang's tutelage was what remains of the Jews. And because I had go back to my Ithaca College days and my professors who say, you know, you start, you don't wait to start, you wake up with your camera and you make photographs. So even before the workshop started, I had probably 500 photographs of Casimir, the old area. So I even meet Chin-Chi Chang and I say, look, I've already like made these photographs. He's like, oh, just go. So I have a wonderful week making photographs, and I've learned a lot. There's a pop-up, all that good stuff. But this is the last day. This is 4 o'clock in the morning. In June, in Poland, the light seems like there's very little darkness. It's like 3 or 4 hours. So I woke up, it's the day of my flight, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna sleep. So I go out into the old area and I see the reflections of the synagogue on the wall. And I'm making photographs. I've composed my photograph. I see it, okay? And all of a sudden, a shadow walks by. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But it wasn't a very interesting shadow. And all of a sudden, the magic starts to happen. And this gentleman walks by with the stoop in his demeanor. And I make this photograph. And of course, I've made 5 of them because I have him coming all the way through the frame. But the idea is like I was there, I had the opportunity, and I had learned and accepted that I started to believe in my ability to make photographs. So my doubt about my abilities really started to slip away through that workshop. That was a real big moment for me to have that kind of like a pat on the back saying, you can do this. You may have to do a lot more of this, but you have the right idea. So that's in 2017. So now I'm finding my flow and my point of view, and I love this street. I've been on this street from the very beginning.
For those who don't know, this is Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh yes, this is Hollywood Boulevard. And when I moved from Hong Kong, where I lived for 15 years, we moved back, my kids and I, to Orange County so that they could, they needed more than Hong Kong could give them. And so we came back. And I was kind of struggling. I didn't have any people there, and my kids are now off doing their school. And so I started to come to Los Angeles to try to find my people. And I came for Street Week and I met Iberinex, and I saw a glimmer of people who really were passionate about the medium. And I was like, okay, this is good. So I took Julia Dean's Los Angeles, her street photography workshop. And so I would come to Los Angeles about an hour and a half, 2 hours before class, and I started to make photographs on the street and meet them at different times. And try to develop my street sensibility here. Try to make photographs that resonated beyond me. Try to push myself. How can I see things? Learn about Los Angeles, meet people, try to start building a community, which I never had. So the street being my friend was my first place where photography felt complete for me. This is in Egypt. It was a surreal experience to make photographs in Egypt. Back in Hong Kong. So I
Can we go
did,
back to the previous image just for a minute? I just wanted to, I had a question. This is obviously somebody's place. Is this someplace that you just wandered into?
so I lived in Hong Kong for 15 years. And Hong Kong is so rich. The street life is just busting. This happens to be off the street in a, they have these kind of small buildings where this is somebody's, it's underneath a big open market. And this is where all the stalls for people who are getting, this is their work. This is a workplace underneath a big market. Yeah, and I just was wandering through, doing my thing, and yeah, he brought it to me that day.
Got it.
So, in preparing for this, I had to sit back and realize that I have been a little unrelenting as far as my passion for the photographic medium, which has driven me back to the street and back to pushing. So I shared with you my street photographs, which I love. However, I also have been really very serious to try to find unique ways for me to make photographs that I can call my own. So I started to take the multiple in camera technique that I did on myself first, and I started to do it on the street. So this is one of the photographs, the very first one I made in camera, waiting for my street class to start at LACP. And I'm walking around Wilcox and I make this photograph. It doesn't happen right away. I have to go back and forth. And about the third time of taking the first photograph and then the second photograph, third time, this magic happens. And when I saw the graffiti, the artwork and the woman's face within the sign, I was just like, okay, this is something I can play with. So I started to take this, and every time I came to LA, I would come and I would work on making this portfolio. And I kept adding and building and challenging myself.
Now, to be clear, these are images that they're in camera. You don't have control over the positioning of various objects, and then they're just how they happen.
Right, and so a lot of times you have to repeat it. So if I really like this photograph I made last year on Hollywood Boulevard, and I hadn't made a multiple in camera exposure on Hollywood Boulevard for about a year. And I kind of challenged myself one day. I was like, okay, I've been out here making single frame photographs of the Boulevard because it's important to me to do that. I have that project going too, but I really wanted to go back and see if I could make a multiple in camera exposure again on the street. And so I had seen this wonderful graffiti. It's an old movie, What Christ Glory. And I had seen this graffiti and I made the photograph, and then I was looking for the other side of the image. And I made a couple kind of bad attempts. And so I had to keep going back to the original graffiti and then back. And then I made this photograph, but I didn't know if it worked. And there again is really important for us as photographers to remember. We have to wait and we have to let photographs sit. And maybe it takes a little time for it to gel. But I went back about a couple months later and I was like, I felt really positive about that experience. And I love that photograph now. It's now one of my stronger ones. This is in Hong Kong when I 3 years ago, I was back on the street there, and because I had been doing multiple in cameras here, I was like, went to the same technique there. Okay, now we're gonna get to the nitty gritty. So the idea of pushing myself and unrelenting passion and trying to find my voice, a lot of that happened through trauma and a change in my everyday life that forced me to really have to reckon with that internal compass, which everybody has things that happen to them. What I learned is that I've always used my camera. That's why I've always taken to the street. And in this particular case, I turned it upon myself. I was alone. I didn't have a community. I was in Orange County launching my children. I didn't really have any people in Los Angeles. And on this particular day, I put the camera the same on a tripod and started just pushing. And it's triple in camera. So there are 3 individual photographs that happen, and then the camera puts them together. And I didn't even care. Doesn't matter what happens. And that's really important to the flow, is not to judge what's going to happen, but to allow it to happen.
By the way, I want to point out that these pieces are resonating with the audience. Yeah, a couple of people have said, "Wow," and "I love this," and so you've obviously hit an aesthetic nerve with people.
Well, the most important thing I think that I have learned over the last 3 years is how important it is to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to share, and to understand that we're just all family, we're community, and we're all in this, I mean, for me, all in this together. And so the idea that my work has started to resonate, I mean, I'm super grateful. When I started to make these photographs part of my betrayal, Shattered in a Moment's
Can you go
portfolio.
back to the beginning of the betrayal series? Because I want to make sure that you're not paying any of your images short shrift. So we've seen the first couple, and then we kind of glossed over the next few,
I don't know.
like this.
So I actually made this photograph. I used a pinhole lens on my Canon 5D Mark III. I got that idea from Wayne. And I came home, and this photograph I made really small, and I never showed anybody. This is a really good example of how we as artists really may not be the best judge of our own work. And I took a book workshop with Elizabeth Avedon, and I happened to put my betrayal together, and I included this one. And I had never shown anybody. And I put them all out on the table, and this is the one she gravitated to. And I was like, wow. So in the process of, okay, my habit of seeing and making the work and being really present, and being unafraid of experimenting, that's how this work happened. This came from a triple in-camera exposure. It sat in my Lightroom for couple years. And as I was exploring my work, I decided to print it. And I printed it out, and then I printed 2 more of it. And then I'm sitting here and I reverse it. And I don't know why I did it. And as I reverse and I print and I'm looking at them, I started to slice them up. And in slicing them up, I started to putting them together, and this photograph emerges. And it gave me new tools to part of my toolbox. This photograph is of the same series, but I didn't do a cutting. This was a photograph that I layered, not in camera and not in Photoshop, but I used a litho film to make a photograph of trees that I had done in Paris, and a photograph that I had done here at home with the pinhole lens. And again, I think this is what's really important about being creative, is that sometimes we don't know why we do them. We're in the throe of it, and we just do it. And then we let the magic happen.
I just have a quick question. There are a couple of red marks
I don't know
that
what
have
they
shown
are,
up.
and I don't know where they came from.
Okay, all right. So serendipity or something. Okay.
Yeah,
We will ignore them for now.
yes, because they came, I don't know, there's a friend.
Okay.
So I'm in Los Angeles, and I went to a review at Los Angeles Center for Photography, and I had met Ibarrenex, and I had never met Christine Shoemaker, and I took it upon myself to share my work. I paid for a review from both of them. I'll never forget that day, and it was truly exciting to have that moment of just intimate sharing. And 5 months later, I get an email from Christine Shoemaker, who is an artist here in Los Angeles. And she had been working on a huge art exhibition called Perceive Me, which I hadn't even heard about, and I didn't know anything about it. And I get this email in May in 2019, and she asked me to participate, to make a photograph of her for this exhibition. And I am beyond over the moon. And we make a date for July. And the day before she's supposed to come see me for the portrait, I do a test on myself. And this is my test. And so I say to myself, okay, I know that I can do this. So the next day she comes, and we, you know, if you're a photographer, or you're a chef, or you're passionate about whatever you do, if there's somebody else on the other side giving you something, it's a partnership. And so we both were part of this journey together. And as she disrobed, and she's standing in my bedroom with the beautiful north light coming through the window, and I start making these triple in camera exposures, and I'm pretty tentative to begin with. And towards like the 26th frame, I'm getting kind of excited. I feel like I'm going to make a photograph. And now this is the 27th frame. So it's 3 photographs, and then it puts together. So this is the 27th photograph that I've made. And I look at her and I say, I think we're done. And so just the whole idea, and I put it on the computer, and I share this photograph. And honestly, for me, this was a very exciting moment, because I did it in camera. There's no Photoshop. It was a moment where all the other exercises that I had been working on through the journey of learning my camera, pushing myself through the multiple in-camera exposures, whether it be 2 or 3 or 5 or 9, the pinhole, all of a sudden, I started to understand that I had habits and a way of working that I felt like I could bring it. And so these are photographs that I use the same technique. So, like I said, I'm pretty darn crazy about photography. And I was asked, what is the one habit that I do every day? And I was really thinking really hard about that. And I have to say that it is light. And it doesn't mean that I have my camera in my hand, but I wake up, and actually the very first thing is I look at the light coming in the window, or the light to the left of me coming through the hallway. When I'm making my coffee, what's coming in the window panes? And I am incredibly riveted. And immediately I may pick up my camera, or I may pick up my cell phone, and I will start playing. I don't know, you know, it is something that resonates deeply for me. So during the beginning of the pandemic, I wanted to push myself a little bit more in my portraiture. So I took a class with Ken Murfeld, and I got a lot out of this. And I made this photograph in that workshop. I was like I had been passionate about his work. I thought his Instagram is like through the roof, how he makes portraits of himself on a daily basis, and they're so complex and rich. And I started to think that, okay, I'm gonna try that. So this is my reaction to his work, which brings me to back to my street. So this photograph I made in Hong Kong in 2014. It was a time where I was walking in the street a lot. I didn't have the skill set I have today, but I knew that I was no longer living there. And so I was making photographs of a city that I had lived in for 15 years and had now come back after 4 years being away. And so I had a new vision, a new openness, a new way of seeing it. And I took this photograph in 2014. I saw it but I didn't know what to do with it. In 2014, I could really feel that we were inundated by the single frame photograph. And I was pushing myself to figure out how I could find a new way to make photographs for myself. And I started pushing and working and putting photographs together in a way that I had never thought of before. And I was working in 2017 with Jim Friedlander, who was mentoring me, pushing me, and I started to take the photographs in 2014. I had shared them with him. We had culled them down to out of something like 4,000 photographs. I think I had 20 good photographs, in all seriousness. And from those 20, I started to play, and I made Bird Market. And I felt that I had started to see my street photographs in a new way, a way that perhaps spoke to me in my visual language, which I didn't know I had before. And finding a visual language is incredibly exciting. So I kind of made 3 extended frames right away, and I'm like bouncing off the walls. I'm like, oh my God, okay. But now to understand how to connect photographs, that was a lot more difficult and is a lot more difficult. So it all stems from looking at each individual photograph as a story, as a communication between each other. And so the layers and the different photographs that come together start to speak. And I think that I'm really driven to make photographs that are layered or have multiple in-camera exposures and extended frames, is because none of us are single frame entities. We're all layered and rich and have so many facets to ourselves. And so I've used my photography as an extension of, I guess we all do this, an extension of who we ultimately are as a creative human being. I don't know where this will go.
Well, I have a question for you, though. You've been doing this for a while now, these extended frames, and I'm wondering how much are you taking pictures with an eye to them becoming part of extended frames, and how much of it is you take pictures, and then you find yourself assembling them and they make sense when you start doing that. So how much of it is preordained, if you will, and how much of it is later on?
Right. Well, so this is a really perfect photograph to have found myself on, because this is a very new extended frame. And I made the photograph on the left hand side of the woman smiling in the picture frame. I mean, that photograph, I had to make a photograph of her, but it was kind of part of my my portfolio of Hollywood Boulevard. But I had thought about connecting it and making an extended frame, but I really didn't know how to do it. And then I was invited into the California Love Book Project with Michael Rababi. And it kind of challenged me because I only had one really strong photograph, extended frame photograph of LA in that series. And he was like, I'll put another one in if you can make one. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do it. So this particular photograph was a challenge for me. So I had the smile on the left. And the middle part of the photograph is part of me walking down the middle of Hollywood Boulevard when I was still in Orange County, coming back and forth and making my first attempts at multiple in-camera exposures on Hollywood Boulevard. So that was in my stash. Okay, so now I felt like I put those two together and it resonated, but I didn't have a photograph in my bank that worked for the third piece or fourth piece. I didn't. So I was on a mission. And so just a couple months ago, I forced myself back onto Hollywood Boulevard and I made the photograph of Mickey hiding on the right. And I came home and I was like, it's probably a combination of me being now very cognizant of this part of my toolbox and how I see, but also the unknown and the unexpected.
So these images in some respects are part of a continuum, like
Yes.
that they don't have a beginning and end.
No, I think that this is part of my work forever. I like the challenge. I've always liked puzzles. This is a photograph from the pandemic, which I was an absolute possessed human being. With the lockdown, I was one of those crazy people that was on the street at 6 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't get enough. And because I was new to LA and LA was incredibly quiet with not a soul on the street, I got to learn my way around the city. So the pandemic, we're all tired of it. I'm definitely tired of it. But it has really helped me get familiar with Los Angeles, make new photographs here in Los Angeles, build on my extended frame photographs and my portfolio on Hollywood Boulevard. And I really want to share some inspiration. A couple of weeks ago, as I was preparing for this talk, I stumbled upon this YouTube by Carolyn McHugh. And it really resonated so deeply with me because what she talks about is she talks about how everybody has a gift. And on the screen behind her, she has Pavarotti and, a swimmer who wins a gold medal at the Olympics. And she says that we all have this unique note that we are given and everybody has it. And it's whether we choose to focus down and to make all the different avenues in our life to help it grow. And I got to think about that a little bit. And I was like, I wanted to share her TED Talk with you because whether you're an artist or a chef or lover of animals, whatever you do with passion, it's your note to develop. And so that's one of the things I wanted to share. And I wanted to share Emmett Gowan, who just spoke at the Click Festival. And it was extremely exciting to see him after 40 years give his presentation and be just as excited by his work. And I hope that you enjoy his work as well. And there you go. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ellen. It's an amazing body of work and one that has developed in, I understand that it's been a lifetime of development that has gone into this, but the actual work itself that we've seen has really only been created in the last few years. And it has remarkable depth and variety to it, despite the fact that it you've only been working on it for a relatively brief period of time. We have lots of people have been commenting. They've all been positive, not surprisingly. People thanking you and saying that the work, they find the work incredible and beautiful. And so that there are lots of things that you can catch up with later on. We're going to be saving the chat, so you'll be able to take a look at that. I'd like to encourage people to ask questions, and I'll be going through the chat to see what we can answer. I also have a few of my own questions. One thing that occurred to me as you were presenting is that you have at times suddenly taken off for places that don't seem to be at all in your makeup up to that point. I mean, when you were, what, 22, you decided you were going to go to Washington. Was there a reason for going to Washington? And then you went to Krakow, it seems to be, and then Hong Kong. Obviously, there were personal things going on, but still, you're going to these places that are completely different from where you have been and what your experience is. What's that all about?
Well, so my camera helps me do those things. I have to say, I am way more brave holding a camera than not holding a camera. But I'm from a tiny little town, which I showed you in upstate New York. And from a very beginning, I knew that I needed to get out. So I had a cousin, my cousin Lisa, who lives in DC, and she says, come, you can stay for a week, and then you can start. And so that was my leap. So knew nobody except my cousin. So yeah, that's kind of I'm a pretty, if something's not working for me, there's something inside my makeup that makes me get up and go. And I think that it's really important to realize that there's lots of friendly faces out there. And so that's also helped me to be brave. I do always have that ball of uncertainty in my stomach, but it doesn't stop me from going. So all those little places, or those big places that I push myself, it's me being me pushing. It's what I do.
Okay. I'll just read a couple of comments. Safialia Shabek says, so proud of you, Ellen. Inspiring and powerful work, my friend. Congrats on a wonderful presentation.
I love you, Safi. Actually, I love everybody that came today. And more.
Sarah Rooney says, thanks for sharing, Ellen. Your vulnerability and honesty and creativity is an inspiration. And we have a few questions. This is from Bing. Do you think using software like, oops, it suddenly jumped on me. Do you think using software like Photoshop is not okay? Is it cheating?
No, I don't think anything's cheating. Honestly, I think creativity there's no such thing as cheating. Yeah, if it resonates beyond yourself, if you have somebody positively or negatively react to your photograph or your artwork or you, not negatively, but it's all about that resonance. So it doesn't matter what you use to deliver your message. The most important thing is to find something that you feel comfortable in using. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay, here's one. At the core of all of your imagery are a deep connection to people and places. You could easily present your work as single frame series, but you choose to combine them. What are your primary objectives in doing this?
My primary objectives are to expand my vocabulary as a photographer. It's to push my visual my visual creativity. I have to show you. So right behind me, these are photographs I did in Krakow back in 2017. I still haven't made this work happen. But a couple weeks ago, these particular photographs were all just single frame photographs. And I ripped 2 of them off the wall, and I cut this one out, and I cut the little girl out. And so now I'm staring. So I just think that it's all about keep pushing. I think that I will always go back to the pinhole because I think it's kind of, it's interesting. And I'll go back to my multiple in-camera exposure, triple in my extended frame, but who knows what I will do next. And I think that approaching creativity with the unknown is really, really why it's fun,
Here are a couple of other comments. I love your fearlessness. This is from Erica Martin. I love your fearlessness and willingness to try anything. Such cool images. And Nikki says, my beautiful daughter, bravo.
Mom's here. Gotta love mom. Yeah.
And Gail Nichols Ali says, approaching creativity with the unknown, amazing.
Yeah, if I can leave everybody with an empowerment, we are all truly unique, and that's it. Authenticity, not being afraid. I think that's the biggest thing that I am grateful for finding my way to Los Angeles, is that being vulnerable and sharing my work has brought me more people into my life. And I think if that's what we can all do, and we get brave enough to each share a little bit more of our vulnerability, we'll be better human beings, because we're really all the same,
Good point. I'm going to go back to something regarding the multiple images, and I'm not fixated on them, but just another question that I had. It seems to me the photographs that incorporate multiple images draw attention to the component of time. In what ways does your work address that?
The component of time.
Well, I mean, all photographs do to some degree, but there's something about putting more than one image together with others that brings it kind of more to the fore, if you will. Is that something you think about? If it's not, then...
No, I honestly think it's because I feel that we're all so layered and so complex. And my little world has been quite complex in the last many years. And I think that we create work that's a reflection of our state of being. And my state of being in the most recent years has been very, very complex, emotional things that have caused me to let them come out in my work. And so it's less about time and more about the complexity of life that I see. And so that's probably more true to it.
Got it. Okay.
But honestly, whatever people see is what they're supposed to see.
Okay. And here's another comment. Gail Nichols Ali also asks, are you available to chat with teenagers?
Absolutely.
So, okay,
Oh my
perhaps
goodness, I
we'll
would
want to
love
hook up
to.
at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to have to, because we've got a, there we go. Bing asks, do you think it's okay to do snapshots on the street? And that's open to interpretation, exactly what a snapshot is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's that snapshot aesthetic that perhaps she's referring to. Or he, I'm sorry, I don't know Bing.
Snapshot. And now you're taking the hairs on the back of my head. Because as photographers or artists, we're taught that we don't really want to make a snapshot. It may look like a snapshot. So if it's a calculated snapshot that we make look like one, that's a lot different than the actual idea of a snapshot like that. So if it's calculated and then it comes across that way, then you're creating art, and you're doing something that resonates beyond yourself, because you're actually doing something really hard to make something look like a snapshot.
Right. Got it. How has finding yourself in the streets of Hong Kong, as opposed to a city in the US, altered your creative process, if it has?
Yes. Being 15 years in Hong Kong, well, I grew as a photographer in Hong Kong. I was a film photographer when I moved to Hong Kong. I'm a slow adapter. So I was very slow to turn to digital because living in Hong Kong, I didn't have any community and I had to teach myself the software. I had to choose the software and I had to teach myself the software. Thank you, Scott Kelby, for teaching me. So I learned Lightroom in a vacuum. And so the colors, the vibrancy, the photographing on the street, you know, in Hong Kong was, it was a feast. What I feel most sad about is I was technically not as proficient in the beginning when my eyes were really clear and the streets were still not as sophisticated, because the longer I was there, the less of the old Hong Kong, it all disappeared. But someday when I look at the film, I will look at it differently and maybe there will be some gems there. But it did make me see the street differently. And when I came back to LA was not as easy to photograph because there's not as much going on. So I had to learn how to see intentionally here differently, and it took me a little while. It was not as easy.
Yeah, certainly the streets themselves are I mean, Los Angeles is laid out differently than most other cities, and Hong Kong, I've never been, but certainly all the evidence that I see is it's very differently laid out, very compressed, very vertical.
Right, and dense, and you know, so it's easy to make photographs because there's thousands of people crossing the street, thousands. Okay, so you come to Los Angeles and you have 20. It's not the
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you're waiting for crowds, Los Angeles is not a place. I mean, there's certain places you can go at certain times, but you're right. It's not. They're, for the most part, the streets are not teeming with people.
No.
But I also can understand the attraction of Hollywood Boulevard because it kind of comes as close as LA does to crowded. So.
Well, and it has a history in the photographic medium, which you know, to walk the streets with, I'm not related to, but Lee Friedlander, and knowing that Gary Winograd walked those streets. I mean, there was something really very special when I first landed in Los Angeles and I was walking down that boulevard where they had made those famous photographs.
Right, right. Let's see. You've been basically talking about this idea of discipline, developing a strong work ethic. However, it seems to me that there's something almost contradictory about then also insisting on including an element of spontaneity. How do you resolve those two seeming contradictions?
Okay, so I was in Hong Kong 3 years ago. I had just gotten there, got my camera on my side here, and I'm talking to my girlfriend, Winnie. I'm late, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, it's a very unusual, I'm in Central, and the streets are usually teeming with cars. There's actually no cars. And there's a red taxi coming down the street. And all of a sudden, there's a red balloon. I kid you not. There's a red balloon that bounces. I pick up my camera. I shot 2 shots, right? And that's it. I get back to the United States several, weeks later, and I put that photograph in my Lightroom catalog. Not only did I catch the red taxi, but I caught the red balloon, and way down, way down, is a woman in red. So it's the discipline of being intentionally there, but then if you're not ready and you don't have all your skill sets and you don't know your camera and you're not framing, I just pick up that camera, and because I know that lens so well, it it framed itself for me. And so the spontaneity I was able to capture. So that's what's really important.
Got it. Okay. Couple of other comments. This is from, forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but Kachi Settles. So great to hear your story. And I love what you said about sharing your point of view through your art. Thanks for sharing. So glad I could be here for your presentation. And Alma D says, thank you for your amazing passion that brings such joy to our eyes. Through your eyes, I saw a magnificent world that otherwise would be seen as simple. JR asks, I think we want to know if it's okay to take photos of people at random in street photography.
If people are on the street, we're allowed to take pictures of them. Now, you do have to respect people, and there is a kind of a street kind of decorum, and excuse me, and you can always, if you take a picture that you know that people are obviously seeing, you can always ask for a model release. But honestly, on the street, it's public.
Well, it's also determined to some extent by jurisdictions that you're in.
True.
And certainly different countries have different
Yes.
points of view about that.
Yes. Well, in Hong Kong, that's a really good point. So in Hong Kong, if you put your tripod on the street, you are no longer able to do that. You have to have a permit. So photographing on the street is fine. But as soon as you put that tripod down, you're going to get a police officer saying, no go.
Right. Okay. Well, there's some places even in Los Angeles where you're going to get that.
Yes, I've seen that in Beverly Hills.
Well, the sidewalks are controlled to a large extent by the owners of the properties that the sidewalks are on. So they can come out and say, that's not acceptable. And
Yeah.
they'll say that it has to do with safety, but it has to do with control, I think.
Right. I saw that happen.
Oh, I've had it happen. So I've had it happen even without the tripod. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see. Sorry, I'm reading. No, I'm going to pass on that. That was one of my questions, and I didn't like it. Okay. Here's a question. Mark Carson wants to know, can we see a printed extended frame?
Yes, you can.
Oh, great.
So this is on acrylic. Yeah. Sorry about the light.
Yeah,
guys.
there you go. No, that's good.
And
Brilliant.
yeah, this is Los Angeles. So this is Union Station.
So all of these pictures were, I mean, all of the images that went into this picture are from
They're
Union
from
Station?
Los Angeles. No, I was walked around. I think that's Koreatown or Jap. You know, this is around there, but two of them are from Union Station. No, Alvera Street. No, there's some secrets in there. Oh, yeah. And so this work's going to be in a show. Oh my goodness, my first show. Yeah. In February at the Photographer's Eye Gallery in Escondido. I'm very honored and grateful to have my work being 15 photographs from my extended frame portfolio are going to be there. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah.
That's great.
So super fun. Yeah. So I'm printing as we speak.
Excellent. I have a couple of technical questions, and I think we should be wrapping it up in a couple of minutes. Bing wants to know what kind of lens are you using mostly? And how many lenses do you need?
Okay, so in the beginning, when I didn't understand my aesthetic, I would switch lenses at rapid fire. And then I settled in on the 40 millimeter for my street work. So I know that it's a little pancake lens, but when I was in Hong Kong and it's such a dense and heavy, carrying around a long lens or whatever, it just didn't work for me. So the 40 millimeter lens became my go-to. So that's the one I use. I do have a treasure trove of lenses. I love the 135. I think it's an exceptionally interesting lens to use on landscapes. I think you have to experiment for yourself and play around and make your own decisions, and they can keep changing.
Very good point. Yeah, absolutely. And then Gail Nichols Alley asks, can you talk about your in-camera multiple exposures? And I guess she's asking about how you accomplish them technically. They're all digital, right?
Yeah, I don't know how to use Photoshop. Someday I'll learn, maybe. But there is a setting in your camera that allows you in the camera setting to do multiple in camera on a Canon 5D. I'm sure other cameras have that setting. It is a lot of experimentation. I don't think there's any other way to explain it other than to just be fearless, make photographs. Doesn't matter if they don't work. Doesn't matter if you make thousands of photographs that don't work. What matters is that you get to explore and have fun and create and maybe make a great photograph or a good photograph that you feel good about. But I think that it's all about experimentation and not being afraid. And I'm happy, like anybody can message me or on Instagram or Facebook and I will walk you through it through your own, no problem.
Good, thank you. On behalf of those people who are interested, and I'm sure they're out there. One last question. Sarah Rooney wants to know, when you turn the camera on yourself, how do you avoid the triteness of modeling or posing?
I used to do that. I used to pose. I tried to be pretty. And, you know, those photographs didn't have anything in them. And so I decided that it was better not to think when I put myself in front of the camera. It was better to allow myself to be raw and vulnerable and get lost in the moment. Very important to allow that moment where it calls you, which it does. There are times when your creative energy and it says, I need to make a photograph. You act on that and just allow yourself to be without any kind of gatekeeping. And it takes practice, but through practicing not posing or showing a nice side of yourself, it happens. It just happens organically.
Got it. That's the last question.
Yeah.
Ellen, it's been fantastic having you to talk to about this incredible body of work, actually several bodies of work. I want to let everybody know that we have been recording this and we are going to be making it available on PPA's YouTube channel. That'll be going up in the next few days, and we'll make an announcement on Facebook and on our website to let everybody know that that's happened. And you're getting lots of thanks from folks in the chat, and deservedly so. I want to let everybody know that we will be very gratefully accepting your donations because we would like to continue with these programs that we do between Forum and Open Show, and look forward to much more of the same. So thank you everybody for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to try to unmute everybody so that people can say, but I don't quite know how to do that. Hang on. I think you may have to unmute yourselves if you want to say hello.
It was great, Ellen.
Thank you.
Congratulations on
Very
that.
nice, very nice, Ellen.
Hello?
Good job.
Oh,
Thanks, Ellen.
Fantastic.
It was fun, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Fabulous, Ellen.
Amazing, inspiring.
Hey, man. Hi, Grandpa.
Great job, Wayne. I mean, who's your name? Oh, great job, Ellen.
Thank you.
Great job. Congrats.
I love you guys. Let's make art. Go out there, make art, be real, be authentic, vulnerable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Doug.
We'll see you next time.
Hi, Lori.